Hello friends, myself Mrs.S.Nusrath Najeeba, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science SF, the Standard Fireworks Rajaratnam College for Women, Sivahasi. In this video, we are going to learn about architecture of ADO.NET. These are the today's learning objectives. First one, we are going to learn about what is ADO.NET. Then we are going to learn about the benefits and its core components and its objects. First, let us see what is ADO.NET. ADO.NET is a collection of classes, interfaces, structures and enumerated types that manage data access from relational data stores within the .NET framework. These collections are organized into namespaces called system.data, system.data.oledb, system.data.sql client likewise. ADO.NET, it is an evaluation from ADO. It doesn't share the same object model but shares many of the same paradigms and functionality. It merges ADO and OLEDB into one layer. Each provider contains a set of classes that implement common interfaces. Next we see what are the benefits of using ADO.NET. The first one is the interoperability through use of XML. It gives us an open standard for data that describes itself, which is human readable and in decipherable text. It is used internally but accessible externally. It can use XML to read and write and move data. The second benefit is the scalability, which is through the disconnected data set that represents connections are not maintained for long periods. Database locking does not occur in this. The third benefit is maintainability. The separation of data logic and user interface creates a maintainability in ADO.NET. Next, let us see about the core components and its architecture. There are two core components. The first one is the object model, second one is the namespace hierarchy. In object model, we can see the objects of system.data and its data providers. In namespace hierarchy, we are going to see the namespaces system.data, system.data.oledb, system.data.common, system.data.sql client and its types. This is the architecture of ADO.NET. In this we can see the database communication has connection, command, data reader and data adapter, which includes .NET Framework Data Provider and a separate XML file for data sets, which contains data table, data row, data column and its connections and constraints. The next one is objects of ADO.NET. The first object is the connection object. It is used to talk to database. This property includes data source, username and password. It provides SQL connection and OLEDB connection. The second object is command, which is an SQL statement or stored procedure. The third one is the data reader, which is used to read only and forward only view of data CF ADO record set. The next is data set. It is the main object for database access. Data view, which gives a filtered view of data set. Data adapter, it initializes the data set tables. This is an example for connection object. In this, the second line system.data represents we are going to access a database. The third line system.data.sql client, which represents the database is going to be a SQL database. The next one is data set, which is an in-memory cache of data from a data source. It is a common way to represent and manipulate data, which is a universal data container and it is not just for use with database. It has a logical or physical representation of data. It is designed to be disconnect from the data source, that is connect, execute query and disconnect. It can use XML to read and write data, to read and write XML schema. Next, the data set uses, the data set is a collection that are used to add and remove tables and relations. The main properties of interest are tables, relations and namespace. Table, it returns the collection of data table objects. Relation, it returns the collection of the data relations. Namespace, it gets or sets the namespace of the data set. This is the view of a data set which contains table. The table includes a data table and the data table is getting a communication with data relation, and there is another one called data view. The next one is data table. It may be mapped to a physical table in the data source. It can be related to one another through data relations. It has optimistic concurrency or locking model. Its properties of interest are columns, rows, parent relation, constraint, data set, primary key. Column, it returns column collection of data columns. Rows, it returns the data row objects as a row collection. Parent relation, it returns the relations collection. Constraints, it returns the tables constraints collection. Data set, which is used to return the entire data set of the data table. Primary key, it gets the data columns that make up the table's primary key. Next one is data view. It is used to create multiple views on data table objects. It is bindable to user interface control. Its properties of interest are table, sort, row filter, row state filter. The first one, table, it retrieves or sets the associated data table. Sort, it is used to get or set the table sort columns and sorting order. Row filter, it is used to get or set the expression used to filter rows. Row state filter, it represents the state filter used in that row. This is the data view architecture. In this, we are having a data view manager which has data view settings. In this data view settings, we can sort and filter the data sets. The next one is the ADO.NET data providers. It is a collection of classes for accessing data source. The data sources can be from Microsoft SQL Server 2000, SQL Server 7 and MSDE. An OLE database provides Oracle, JET and SQL OLE database providers. It establishes connection between datasets and data stores. There are two .NET data providers. The first one is via the ADO, that is system.data.oledb namespace. The second one is from the SQL server, that is system.data.sql client namespace. System.data.oledb is the default .NET data provider. This is the .NET data provider hierarchy. The first one is the system data, which contains SQL client and OLEDB client. In SQL client, we are having SQL command, connection, data reader and data adapter. These are used to connect a SQL database. The second one is the OLEDB. It also contains command, connection, data reader and data adapter. These objects are used to connect a database. I hope this video will help you to learn more about the architecture of ADO.NET. Thanks for watching.